morning, everybody. It's Bretta, and I am back. I am so excited. I'm getting ready to do my April wrap-up, and I am so glad April is over, even though May looks like it might be just as chaotic, because I am in the Escape the Readathon, which is being hosted by Books with Lexi, and this year's theme is the Orange Cat Cruise, or at least that's the title of the readathon. And it has been really fun so far. Today is the 10th. So we are a third of the way through the month. We've been doing a lot of reading. I have had the last couple of days off because I've had a lot going on at home. But I am still trying to keep up with my reading, so I listen to audiobook whenever I can, and I am still working on finishing up The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and then I am moving on to Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, which is actually going to be a 2-for-1 for me, because that one is actually my book club pick for this week, or this month, excuse me. So, not only will it satisfy one of the prompts for our readathon, but it'll also take care of my book club pick as well. I am on Team Podcasters, which our hosts are Mel from Melanor Reads and Heather from Books and Heather. So I am really excited. We've been having a lot of fun in our chat. There's been a lot of fun little photos and stuff like that have been created. So it's been a really enjoyable experience so far. And this is my first readathon, so I'm trying to do my best to stick with the Discord chats and doing the reading and keeping up on my compile list, because I do try to make sure that I'm doing a review or at least a star rating of every book that I read. I have finally compiled my list of my reads for April, which is why we are here. So just a quick recap for April. I did my first TBR game in April, and it is based on Chutes and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders, depending on where you're from. And I have called it Spills and Stacks. So it is a traditional 100 place board, 100 spots. So I ended up with a very large TBR for April. And I am working my way into maybe doing a different type of method. Maybe I'll put myself at like a limit of 6. That way I can still have some fun reads. And then that way I can just kind of work through the board as I want to go. So basically April ended up being massive, like massive. I have 10 pages here. And that's just to help me get through my reviews and my thoughts, because there is just so much information. And I keep telling myself I am going to write down my thoughts on a book right after, and I keep forgetting because I just want to jump right into the next book, which is a really bad habit of mine. Essentially, I ended up with 13 reads for my TBR, but I actually ended up with doing 15 books. And that was because right at the end of the month, I had a lot going on, and I was taking care of some stuff with my daughter. She wanted to go up and visit her friends in South Carolina. We live in Florida. So I had to plan a last minute trip for that, and ended up spending the last day of the month on that trip. Or no, second to the last day of the month on that trip and the last day. So for the 29th and 30th of April, I was on the road. So I did a lot of audiobook listening, for that trip. And with that, I was able to knock out 2 of the books that I really wanted to read just for fun, because I had tackled all of my TBR at that point. So the first book of the month that I read was The Fox and the Hound. That book was a really cute rom-com contemporary book, and it is by R.S. Gray. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. And this book follows Madeline, a small town girl who is 27. She's a real estate agent, and it follows Adam Fox, and he is a veterinarian who has just moved to town. So he is taking the place of the veterinarian who recently retired. And Madeline is kind of in this really bad slump in her life. She's a realtor. She's only sold one house, which was to her brother. And that's all she's been able to accomplish in her realty game for a while. She's had this one client that she's been spending all kinds of time with, and it's just not working out. She has adopted a puppy from like the Humane Society, and she's told, oh yeah, he's gonna be great. He's like maybe 45 pounds. He won't be big at all. He ends up being a Bernese Mountain Dog. So 6 months into her owning this puppy, she is trying to wrangle this dog one day, and he manages to get away from her. She's wearing heels, she's dressed for work, so she ends up getting all just beat up and bruised. And as the dog runs around a corner, she ends up hearing this like yelp for help. And this is our meeting point of Adam and Madeline. And so the dog's name is Mouse, which Adam finds extremely frustrating for some reason. And so ends up being kind of a friends or an enemies to friends to lovers kind of thing, because initially he just can't stand her. He doesn't understand. He's attracted to her, but he can't stand like the fact that she has this dog and it's this absolute chaotic mess. So she ends up coming to like dog training classes that he is putting on because they were already set up with the previous veterinarian through the YMCA. And as you get through the story, you know, you run into some fake dating, again, enemies to friends to lovers. And the whole thing just kind of, it's just a really enjoyable story. It's cute. It's funny. The dog makes the story for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Adam and Madeline's chemistry. The way that their relationship develops is really super cute. But it was a really good read for the start of the month. It just kind of put me in a good mood. So this one did get 3.5 stars. And I'm definitely going to check out some more R.S. Grey because I really did enjoy this book. My next book was The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. And this book, oh my goodness, this book wrecked me. It's a beautiful story. It's from the dog's perspective, and the dog's name is Enzo. His master or his owner, his name is Dennis. Dennis? Yeah, Dennis, but he goes by Denny. And he is a massive racing fan. He is a race car driver and a race car driving trainer. He's also a mechanic. So he's got this like massive love of racing because of his owner, and they'll watch races together and everything else. And along down the lines, we meet Eve, which is Denny's girlfriend and then eventual wife, right? Then they have their daughter, Zoe. I always want to say Zoe, but it's probably Zoe. And so this dog's life alters and changes. You know, he has, you know, it's just him and his buddy. And then he has, you know, the girlfriend, then wife, who he never really seems to connect with. He's just frustrated that, you know, he's not getting as much time with his buddy. And then along comes Zoe, who is the child, and he just takes to her. He is, you know, all about her and being her protector, and he's just a really sweet dog. His perspective is really interesting. I really enjoyed just the concept of this story. It was really sweet. I will say that, you know, there is conflict in this story. Eve gets sick. Enzo, being a dog, because dogs have this heightened sense of smell and this heightened awareness of things like that, you know, they're used to, you know, detect seizures coming along and things like that, because they can, you know, sense the changes in our chemistry within our bodies. So he ends up realizing that Eve is sick. Of course, he has no way to tell anyone, but it kind of changes their relationship. And she knows something's wrong. She's getting these really bad headaches. She's having mood swings, but she will not go to the doctor. And eventually something happens and she gets hurt and she ends up having to go to the hospital. And they find that she has brain cancer. So, you know, the conflict is this battle for her to get better. and basically being told you have like 6 to 8 months to live. And so things change in the household very quickly. Denny is now, you know, mother and father, provider, everything. He has to, you know, he's balancing his time between taking care of Zoe, going to the hospital, and making sure he spends time with his wife. And of course, Denny's kind of getting left out. So he spends a lot more time just kind of reflecting and just being alone. So there's this overarching theme in the story that Enzo has watched this documentary about dogs, and I can't remember the culture that it follows. If I can find it, I'll put it down here. But essentially it is that if a dog lives his best, most compassionate, most fulfilling life, he will in his next life become a man. And that's all Enzo can think about. He wants to be able to be a man. He wants to be able to race. He wants to be able to drive. He wants to be able to communicate. And so there's this underlying desire in Enzo, the entire story, to give everything he can give to the people in his life. And it's so sweet, and it made me cry lots of times. This is a beautiful book. And I think it's one that I think everyone should read. I really think there's something to be gotten from this book. I think Garth Stein did a beautiful job. The writing is impeccable. So that is The Art of Racing in the Rain. I gave that book 4.5 stars. It was one of my favorites of the month. I started The Stand shortly after that, which is a huge jump. We go from this really compassionate, heartfelt, warm story to dystopian, post-apocalyptic, what is supposed to be horror, which I felt like was not. Obviously, Stephen King is well known for his horror stories, and for those who really enjoy his books, they love that about him. But in this book, I just felt like it was really centered on the post-apocalyptic kind of dystopian tale as opposed to any kind of horror. I didn't find any elements of it. Some descriptions were a little bit, but I really didn't find much horror in this book. It's definitely polarizing good versus evil, but for me, I really felt like it was much more of a almost like a religious telling, because you have the character of Mother Abigail, who is kind of this representative of God, and then you have your antagonist, who is Randall Flagg, and he is kind of this epitome of the devil. And you have these two very distinct groups. One's in Boulder, Colorado. The other one is in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so, you know, City of Sin, Las Vegas. So you've got kind of these questionable, not very good people over here. And then you have these other people who just want to rebuild. They just want to be able to live a good life after this massive disease has like wiped out most of the country. The disease that wipes out the country is stemmed from a government experiment that has taken place in the Mojave Desert. So it gets out, obviously, and slowly makes its way through, you know, the population. And there's some people who are immune to it, but the majority of people are not. So you end up with this just wipeout. I mean, just massive wipeout of the population. And these other people who are managing to survive slowly trickle and find their way to each other. Now, this takes place in a very interesting way. Mother Abigail is almost like she projects into the dreams of those who are on the side of good. And then Randall Flagg projects into the dreams that are on the side of evil. And they can communicate with their, in my opinion, acolytes. So this disease called Captain Trips is, for better or worse, something that, even though, you know, it runs its course, it's not gone. So everybody has this fear that it could happen again. And so if anyone has ever seen the movie Contagion, it's literally, it's like taking a number to the power of itself, and then you take that number to the power itself, and then again and again, and it's just, you know, Contagion, 28 days, I Am Legend. You can pick whatever, you know, bio-organic weapon movie or, you know, zombie apocalypse movie you want, and you can just kind of figure it out from there. So this book, I really enjoyed it. I did the complete and uncut version. So the original book came out in 1978. The complete and uncut edition came out essentially 1988. There are updates within the writing, because I'm pretty sure there's certain things that are mentioned that were not part of culture and society in 1978. So if you've read the original and you read this one, you'll notice the differences. If you haven't read the original and you read this one, obviously you won't, but it's like 400 pages longer than the original book. So my biggest thing, I think, that I found interesting about this story was that people's immunity to Captain Trips had nothing to do with their moral character or their ethics or anything like that. You had good guys, you had bad guys, you had gray people. Like, there was no amount of good or bad that could cause you to be able to survive. So you have still this huge variety of good and bad within the communities. And I really liked that, because I felt like it didn't take it too far into a religious kind of standpoint of the book. And this book got my 4.5 stars for me. Again, there were a few things that I just kind of probably could have either gotten more information or gone without. And overall, the book itself, I would say probably this is one of my top reads. I would read this book again. Absolutely. And I actually do plan on getting a hardback copy of this book and keeping it. So I did. I really enjoyed this book. Now, my next book that I read was A Deadly Education. And this was my book for a magical school. I had to scrap the idea of not doing a series for my magical school, because it's really hard to find a book about a magical school that is not part of a series. It's just kind of a thing, which makes sense. So I did A Deadly Education, which is about a school called the Scholomance, and it is an epic fantasy written by Naomi Novik. Excuse me, I'm jittery, so I'm trying to stop. I've had a lot of coffee this morning and I haven't stopped yet. Thank you very much. Excuse me, my dog is needing some attention. So this takes place at a school called the Scholomance, and it is, in a sense, sentient. It moves around based on like the time of year and what's going on in the school and the events. So we have Galadriel, or Elle as she goes by, and she is kind of a outcast kind of character. So it's like a, you know, the typical kind of high school or middle school, but these are older students. They're like 17, 18 years old. And you have a typical kind of standard of, you know, groups. So there's cliques, there's, you know, the school jock or the hero of the story, who is a reluctant hero. And then you have the other students that are kind of like background characters until they're not. Bubba, you're killing me. You're killing me. So they end up, Orion, which is our reluctant hero, he is a member of like the elite, I guess, of the school. He's part of a coven in, I believe it was New York. And he ends up saving Elle a couple of times. And this irritates her to no end for some reason. She just does not want to owe him anything. And she makes this very clear to him. And then, for whatever reason, he latches onto her. Like, he's like, wow, she's not treating me like anything special. She's just treating me like a normal person. And this, like, kind of, like, starts their friendship. So, in a sense, this kind of begins their enemies to friends story. And so they end up, he starts sitting with her at lunch, and then these other students start following along. And so she slowly starts to come out of this exiled kind of status and starts to kind of get slowly accepted into groups. And she's been surrounded her whole life by this kind of stigma, because when she was young and went to visit with her father's family, her grandmother had a vision about her that basically was like, she's bad. She's no good. She's going to do something awful with her magic. So her mother has worked very hard to kind of do whatever she can to prevent this from happening. And her mother is a healer. And there's just a lot that happens within this story. And Orion has kind of made it his mission to protect students in school. So there are these things called Malficaria. And in the book, Malficaria it encompasses anything that is kind of like a magical monster. For short, they call them Mals. So he ends up, like, almost every single day, he's killing Mals, right? And he's saving someone's life. And it becomes this thing where like him and Elle start keeping track of how many times he or she has saved the other's life. And ends up being a really kind of fun and interesting banter between the two of them, because it's like, you owe me now, or no, I got one up on you. Overall, the book is well done. In the beginning, I had a really hard time with it. It was Elle got a little annoying at the beginning, but she slowly starts to come out of that and become a character that I could really enjoy. It just took me a while to get there. I think I was about halfway through the book before I really got to where I was not like wanting to smack her upside the head. So in the end, I do want to continue the series. It will be a little while before I do that, though. The next one that I read after A Deadly Education is The Nightingale. Now, I'm just going to say, damn it, Kristen Hanna, because I was in the middle of Walmart listening to the probably last hour of this book while I was doing my grocery shopping, trying not to bawl my eyes out. This book was so powerful. I have found in the last couple of months that I really enjoy books that center on real historical fiction, as far as like they are grounded in real events, and they take a story that is poignant and heartfelt and they make it into something believable. Now, in this book, it is based on real women from World War II. It's not a true story. So historical fiction based on a true story. And parts of it do actually coincide with things that actually happened. So we follow Vianne and Isabel, who are sisters. Vianne for the most part, at the beginning of the book, Vianne is 14 and Isabel is 4. They've recently lost their mother, and their dad has he's done. He can't function. He is a veteran of World War I, and when he came back from the war, he was just not the same person. And then when he lost his wife, he had nothing left to give. So the girls are sent off to be wards at this place in, where was it? Le Jardin. I'm sure I butchered that, but hey. So they're sent off to be wards, and Vianne, 14, has since the moment her mother died and was sick, she's been kind of having to take on the role of mom. And she's 14. She doesn't want to be a mom. She's not ready. She doesn't want to have to be a mother to her sister. So she looks for escape almost from the get-go. She meets another young boy, and they end up falling in love, and she moves on very quickly to becoming a wife and a mother. And Isabel is just kind of left with nothing. Her dad doesn't want to take care of her. Her sister is moving on with her life, and she's just kind of like this afterthought. And that's how she feels for the most part throughout the beginning of the story as they establish our characters. So we end up falling in with the story with Vienne when she's 29 and Isabel when she's 19. And Isabel has been bounced from boarding house to private school to wherever, trying to get her to act like a proper young lady. And she's just not having it. She doesn't want anything to do with these private schools. She just wants to be home with her family. She wants to be with her dad or her sister or whoever, that she just wants to be loved, right? She wants to have purpose. She wants to do something with her life. And Vienne is a elementary school teacher in her town in Les Jardins, and she has an 8-year-old daughter named Sophie. So you end up going on this journey with these two young women, and this is right at the occupation of France when the Germans come in during World War II. And it ends up, you get Isabel, who is this kind of petulant, impulsive young woman, and Vienne, who ends up being alone because her husband is drafted into the military, and she's trying to take care of her daughter. And all the while, the Germans are taking over their town. So one German ends up moving in to the home. He basically says, hey, I'm going to be living here in this room. You're just going to deal with it. So Vienne, in the interest of protecting herself and her daughter, she's compliant, she's complicit, and she does whatever she can to survive. But Isabel she just can't. She can't stand it. She's angry, she's frustrated, and one night she ends up becoming a part of this group that is working against the Germans in secret. And they are saving Allied soldiers who have been downed and are, if they're not found by an ally, they're taken prisoner by the Germans. And this story is about their journey throughout the entirety of the war and the sacrifices that they make and the choices that become a part of who they are as sisters, as mothers, as human beings. This book was beautiful. Chris and Hannah, you wrecked me, but I loved it. This book got 5 stars. It was a 100% 5-star read for me. I will be picking up other books. I just have to be ready for them because sometimes I just don't want to cry. So very, very good book. Highly recommend to anybody who hasn't read it. It's just beautiful. Now, my next book, complete change of pace. I went on to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and it's the Senior Year Chronicles or something like that. And this was The Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. I want to say, first and foremost, I think if I had read this right after I had finished the initial series of Percy Jackson, I would have enjoyed this story much better. But I've been apart from that world for so long. I think the last time I read Percy Jackson was when my daughter was like 4 and she's 17. So that tells you something. There were, I think it was 14 years between when Percy Jackson initially came out and the release of this new series. Overall, the story was cute. There were moments that were funny, and it was a very lighthearted, good read for a middle grader. I think it would be a perfect book to follow, especially if the kids haven't read Percy Jackson and they start it and then they move right into this book. It would be a great book for that because it's just an easy read. It's not super long. I think the story was like maybe 300 pages. And, you know, it's a hero's journey, side quests, you know, powerful artifacts, things of that nature. You've got mythological creatures. You still have Annabeth and Percy, who are, you know, boyfriend and girlfriend. He wants to go to college with her really bad, but his education has taken a massive hit because of all the quests he went on in the original series. And then, of course, you have Grover, who is his buddy, and Grover is still this, like, I want to hug you, you're a little teddy bear, I love him. And so Percy is trying to figure out how to get into New Rome University. So from here on out, I'll call it NRU. And his education, he can fix that. But because Zeus is a jerk, he has to get 3 letters of recommendation from 3 different gods. And all of them have to be done after completing a quest. Hence, the Chalice of the Gods. So, Ganymede, which is our god who is giving the quest this time, has lost the Chalice of the Gods, which is what he uses to serve drinks in Olympus. And we end up going on all these different little journeys. And of course, like I said, fun, heartfelt, easy to read book. But I digress. I could have gone without ever reading this book. I will probably not pick up the rest of the books in the series. It doesn't interest me anymore. But I did give it 4 stars. Rick Riordan, he is a great writer. I just don't feel like this series was really anything that added to the Percy Jackson story. I feel like the era of people who read Percy Jackson, they're all adults now. So I feel like had we jumped further ahead because we had such a massive break in between books, it would have made more sense. Bring us Percy Jackson as an adult. You know, maybe he's in college. You know, I felt like only 2 years in between when the first story, or when the last book in the first series ended and where this story starts, it didn't make sense for me. So I did give it 4 stars, but overall, I probably won't pick up this book just because it's not my tempo anymore. For my book club read, which is my little book club in Sebastian, we are called Lit Happens, and we meet at the local library. We read Spare, which was by Prince Harry. And this book grabbed me from the very beginning. I don't know if it's because I grew up with Princess Diana in the news, and I remember when she died and all of the chaos and controversy around it, but this book it grabbed me. And Prince Harry I don't know who his shadow writer was, if he even had one, but the book was so well written. The descriptions were so good, and you could really get a sense for his emotional state during the entire story and how everything that was going on in his life made him feel. At the beginning of the book, we are following him right after Diana's death and the turmoil that he's going through and the fluctuation in the relationships he has with Prince Charles, with his brother, with his grandmother, the Queen, and all the things that he's feeling internally. So like he goes through a massive state of denial in his mother's death. Like she's not dead. She can't be. She's hiding. And that's the premise of like the first act of this book. And then in the second part of the book, we go along with him as he's become a young man and he goes into the military. And all along the way in these stories, it covers how heavily the paparazzi are monitoring their lives, and that the slightest misstep, it can bring them down. And because Harry is the younger of them, it's almost like they just kind of leave him out to the wolves, which I really struggled with, because by the end of this book, I was like, I really don't like the royal family. But, you know, this is only one perspective. So it also goes into, you know, his meeting Meghan Markle. It talks about his previous relationships and, you know, one particular young woman that he is very close to for several years. And you cannot help but have empathy for the situations that young child Harry, young man Harry, and now married Harry go through. Like, he does a really, really good job of letting you really see him. And that's really all I can say about this book. If you want to know more about his journey and his life, I highly recommend you pick this book up. I gave it 4.5 stars. I am not a nonfiction girly. I am not a biography girly or an autobiography girly. This book hit something with me. And it actually makes me want to pick up a few other books that I've been kind of telling myself I want to read, but I'm just not that girl. So I will probably be picking up some more nonfictions and autobiographies. I would much rather read an autobiography than a biography because I want to hear it from, you know, from their mouth. I don't want to hear it from someone else. So this book, I would definitely recommend it. My next read. So I had set aside 1984 to read for my post-apocalyptic story. I'm sorry, George Orwell fans. I couldn't. I got to like page 111 and I just couldn't do it anymore. I don't know if I had read too much already this month or what, but I couldn't. It was too convoluted. It was I couldn't. So I ended up DNFing this book. Maybe I'll come back to it in the future, but I don't really think so. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So in that vein, I ended up, for my post-apocalyptic story, I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I got really lucky and I picked this book up at a used bookstore for $15, and it's in immaculate condition. And I also got Sunrise on the Reaping, so I'm super excited because I want to read that one. So this book, 5 stars. 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. The jumping back in time and seeing things from Coriolanus Snow's perspective was fascinating for me. I mean, at least me, when I read The Hunger Games, I could not figure out why Coriolanus Snow was such a jerk, bad guy, whatever you want to call him. He was a total shithead. His story as a young man, I think he's 17 in this story, and he's a senior in high school, or a senior at the academy, is full of so much angst and, I don't want to say trauma in the sense, but there is this festering wound with him that he has had since the end of the war, the rebellion. And you really see how all the events of his life change him. And then you jump in and it's the 10th annual Hunger Games. It's not going well for the Capitol. People are not interested in watching children from their districts die. So you have the game master and you have the dean of the students who is, for whatever reason, got it out for him. The game master who is completely crazy. I'm telling you, crazy. And so he is chosen among 24 other students to be a mentor in the games. And he's like, oh, this is my chance. So he can go to university. because his family's fortune is gone. His entire family's fortune was sunk into District 13, which was nuked. It's gone. Does not exist anymore. So all the money that was a part of his family's fortune and everything that they had going for them prior to the rebellion ending is gone. So it's him, his cousin, and his grandmother. And they live in this really beautiful, magnificent apartment in the capital, but no one knows they're essentially broke. He has no way to move on to university. So this is his story of trying to salvage the Snow name. And as a mentor, each student from the academy is given a tribute from one of the districts. So no one knows what tribute they're getting, not from the beginning. And so he's excited. He thinks, oh yeah, I'm a Snow, I'm gonna get this great tribute. Well, he ends up getting the female tribute from District 12, which he feels like is a major slap in the face. Hence the whatever going on with the dean, right? And so this is Lucy Greybeard. She is kind of a gypsy in a sense. Like, they didn't exist in any one district prior to the rebellion, but because they were in District 12 when the rebellion ended, she was no longer allowed to leave. She's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde, I would say. Like, she is cunning and smart and talented. Like I said, she's kind of like a gypsy. They are performers. They used to travel around and do shows and performances for events for people in all the districts. But her parents are gone. It's just her and her ragtag band of musicians. And she ends up getting assigned to Snow, to choreo. And he feels slighted. She thinks he has no faith in her. And the question of morality and decisions and consequences and everything else comes into play so well in this book. Suzanne Collins does such a great job with how she builds her world and presented in a way that really helped me to understand who Snow became as a man. And I loved this book. Loved this book. Definite 5 stars. Definitely will read again. I am dying to get to Sunrise on the Reaping, and I really want to read the entire series again. There is a definite element of, like, you know, the angel and the devil on your shoulder in this book. Like, he is plagued with what decisions to make. And some backfire, some don't. But, you know, he's got enemies, he's got friends, and then friends who become enemies, and enemies that become friends. Excellent storytelling, Miss Collins. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So after that, I read People We Meet on Vacation. This is my first Emily Henry read. I'm kind of wishing it wasn't, because I feel like it left me lacking in a lot of things. There are elements of this story that I thought were really sweet and really funny, but there was just this kind of like lack of believable chemistry between the characters for me that I felt fell a little flat in the story. There was a lot. I mean, this book is, let's see, this book is 361 pages, which that's not that long, but I feel like it could have been shorter, or at least I feel like the story could have been more focused on Poppy and Alex and less on all the side characters that they meet, which I get. People we meet on vacation, I get that, but I just, it wasn't that great for me. I did give it a 3.5 stars because the writing was good. There was a decent plot line. You know, the atmosphere of the different places that they visited, it was good. You know, looking at my Copile rating, it is 3.5. Will I pick it up again? Probably not. Like, you know, I could have gone with or without this book. My next book, which ended up being, I think this one was I can't remember which prompt this one fell under. Like I said, by the end of the month, I was reeling with how many books I had read. Oh, this was my has a weather element in the title. That's right. So this book is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This book, I know there's a lot of controversy about it. I know a lot of people said they weren't really happy with it. There are elements of this book that I loved, and there are elements of this book I could have done without. It was a long book, I do know that. And, you know, of course, we've got the standard tropes, the chosen one, forbidden romance, the evil one, high stakes, and side quests. Now, side quests is the one I want to really talk about, because I felt like the many different locations and the many different quests involved in this book were not really that necessary, or at least they didn't need to be dug into as deeply. I get what she was trying to achieve with it. I just felt like it got a little bit repetitive. Yes, we got a good look at Violet and Xaden's relationship growing and things like that, but we also know that at the end of the book too, there was a massive cliffhanger. And the level with which Violet attacks the problem in this book, I get it because she loves him so deeply, but it became a little redundant as well. And, you know, the secrets and everything else happening and all of the outlooks of everybody within their kind of group, I struggled with it a little bit. Overall, the storytelling was great. I really enjoyed the incorporation of the flyers with the Dragon Riders, and I really, really liked the way Violet campaigned for the flyers and the riders to work together and to find a way to allow the flyers access to what they needed in order to be able to, you know, rival the Dragon Riders, because there was a lot that was really wrong at the beginning of this book with how the flyers were being treated at Bascath. So I had the incorrect notion that this was a trilogy. Now, obviously, we all know it's not. And if people had, you know, maybe gone back in time and looked at some of the old interviews, it was never intended to be, which I never bothered to go back, so I just thought it was a trilogy. Am I disappointed that we didn't get a nice little bow on this package? Yes, but no, because the way she left this book just what? Like, so many questions. I have so many questions. So please, don't take too long. I really, really, really want to know what happens next. There are other things that occur during this book that you're like, what? Wait a minute. No. Wait. Okay, that makes sense. Like, you will do that a few times during this read. Overall, this got 4 stars from me, which, I mean, that's not great, but it's not perfect, right? It's somewhere in the middle. So I really hope that she comes out swinging with this next book, because I need some resolution, man. Like, I really need some resolutions. Moving on to my kind of more fun reads that took place at the end of the month. There are 2 books, because I'm going to kind of clump them together, because they ended up finishing out a series for me. And that is The Hunger of the Gods and The Fury of the Gods by John Quinn. Now, I can jump down the rabbit hole of John Quinn because it's so easy, because he is a phenomenal character writer. I love him. Like, I cannot wait to pick up my next John Gwynne read, which I still haven't decided which series I'm going to go with. We're still following Orca, Varg, and Elvar, right? Those are our three mains from the first book. But then we get a little bit more in this one, and we are thrown Beor, who, if you know, you know. And then we get Guthvar, who... Guthvar. What a prick. Anyway, sorry, I am not a Guthvar fan. His point of view was well worth reading, but every time I got to a chapter by him, I'm just like, what are you going to do right now that's going to make me dislike you even more? So, Leek Rifa, which is the dragon god, is loose. And she is calling all of these creatures to her in order to strengthen her forces and hopefully basically take over the entire area and country. You still have Queen Helka, who is not somebody Leek Rifa likes. And then you have, you know, a few of the side groups that are still part of the main story. One of the biggest things I liked about John Gwynne's process and the way he wrote this series was the recap he puts in the beginning. It's like when you watch a series and you've gone away for 6 months and the beautiful companies that make television put together this nice little recap that brings you back up to date. John Gwynne put this at the beginning of both The Hunger and The Fury of the Gods, which I really didn't need it for The Fury of the Gods, but I was so appreciative with The Hunger of the Gods. And so you're going through this story and you get this refresher. So you're not coming in and you're like, okay, what was that thing again? Or who was this again? What group is this person a part of? You're not doing that. And I loved that about these series. Now, I know in the first book, a lot of people had a hard time with Elvar. She is kind of just like I'm going to go after whatever I want and I'm going to take it character. But when it comes down to looking at the series as a whole, Elvar became so much more than I thought. And so much of the character growth that happens is really heavy in Elvar's role. Because Orca, she really doesn't change. You know, she stays pretty much on the same mission the entire series, and then it's all about revenge once she's completed her mission. Varg, he grows, of course, because he was a thrall, and now he's part of the Bloodsworn. But there is a massive amount of growth for him in confidence, right? His overall person, his overall character, I feel like, doesn't change. But he grows, and he becomes this warrior, and I love that progress for him. But Elvar, I love the way her story ends. I love the way her story changes throughout the series. She becomes somebody who is just able to be respected, and it's for all the right reasons. I really loved the character development with Elvar. And of course, you have all of these events happening. You end up with a massive, massive number of battle sequences. And what's great about how they were presented is that you're not getting lost. As long as you're paying attention to when the chapters change, you aren't getting lost. Like, you know exactly who you're following. And I really enjoyed that about it because, you know, jumping from Beor or Guthvar or Orca, because those in the storyline, you get a lot of interaction between those three groups, especially in the last book. But how these people end up crossing paths over and over in just such organic ways is really well done. John Gwynne has got a really, really good knack for taking the characters through this story and on these journeys, and when they meet up or they have battle sequences or they have interactions, it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel convoluted. They feel like they are truly moving through this world and these lands. And when they're meeting back up, it makes sense. So I really loved the way you progress through the story, and you get your answers, you get highs, you get lows, you get death. Oh my gosh, so much death. And oh my gosh, I was so mad about some of the deaths. But, you know, the really, really great writers, they tend to kill off some characters that you're really attached to. And as much as I hate it, it makes me love them even more, because it means they're not afraid to rock the boat a little bit. These books really did it for me. This whole series, I plan on getting it in its entirety. I've done most of what I've done with it with ebook or audiobook. So I really, really want this series in a physical copy. And my plan is to sit down and maybe one time on a whim, just reabsorb the entire thing. Is this a series I wish to be able to read brand new again? Absolutely. This was great. I loved this. So I highly recommend John Gwynn's Bloodsworn Saga. It's amazing. I gave book 4 5 stars. I gave book 5 4.5 stars. And the only reason it lost anything is because there was so much more from Guthvar's perspective, and there were a few moments where it felt a bit chaotic within the fight scenes. But overall, I mean, the writing is still excellent. The character development is still amazing. There's logic. Everything is fantastic. But there were just a few things that kind of like, I had to kind of like a couple of times just step away from the book and give myself a few minutes to just be like, okay, I can deal with Guthvar again, or okay, I get what just happened. So as far as that goes, those were really my only hiccups with this series as a whole. So I loved this story. And my final book, which I read on the very last day of the month, was The Stolen Queen. And that is by Fiona Davis. And it was my book club pick for Lit Happens for April, right? So I think I read it the 29th and the 30th. And we had our meeting on the 1st. So anyway, this book it's a historical fiction book. It's got a little bit of, I guess, fantasy elements in it, but it's really rooted in just reality. And it's about a young woman who in the 1930s goes to Egypt to participate in an archaeological dig. Her name is Charlotte. And she goes there because she is fascinated with history and she loves Egyptian history. So she goes there and she thinks that she's going to be a part of this, incredible experience. And of course, it's the 1930s. She is treated as a 1930s woman. So she's really not included in a lot of the really important parts of the dig from the beginning. But as time goes on, she gets included in a few more things, and she ends up being part of this massive discovery. The discovery centers around a female pharaoh, which has never been discovered before. Now, there's a lot of parts of this book that are centered in actual history. It's just been fictionalized. And she ends up falling in love during this time frame with this man named Henry, and they kind of embark on this love affair, and she ends up pregnant, so they get married, right? Her parents, of course, are completely upset about this because they're 1930s parents, and she has a daughter named Layla, and over the course of time during this dig, World War II starts to heat up, and what ends up happening is they shut down the dig site and they're sending everyone home. So Henry, Charlotte, and Layla are boarded up onto this boat, and along with this other guy, Leo, Leonard, whatever his name is. He's not talked about a lot, and I don't really like him, so they get boarded on this boat, and they're being evacuated. Well, something happens, and the boat hits something, and it sinks. And Charlotte is trying to hold on to Layla and everything else, and things just kind of turn into chaos. So Henry, in an attempt to make things easier for Charlotte, takes Layla. And something happens, they get separated, and the boat goes down. It's gone. She's found a couple of days later on the shore, alive, but she's hurt, she's unconscious, and her memory is a little bit foggy for a little while. As she's trying to get better, she's looking for her family, and she can't find them anywhere. They're gone. She can't find them. And, you know, this is the 1930s. There's not super easy ways of finding people. You know, even it wasn't until the end of World War II that things like the Red Cross Society started to help people to try and locate loved ones who were lost during the war and things like that. So obviously it's a lot harder to locate people. So she loses Henry, she loses Layla, and she returns home, and she's just this broken young woman. She's a widow, she's lost a child, and her parents just want to sweep everything under the rug, right? And one day her mentor from Egypt comes to visit her, and he offers her job at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. And her parents try to burn the letter. She finds the letter in the fire that her parents are trying to eliminate. And she ends up taking the job. So we end up fast forwarding to 1978. Charlotte is in her 60s, or she is 60, I can't remember exactly. And she is a curator, like one of the head curators at the Met. And she is in the process of doing all these changes to the Egyptian wing of the museum. And she loves her job. She's dedicated. She's intelligent. She's accomplished for being a woman in the 1970s. And then we are introduced to Annie, who is a young woman. I think she's 19, who is down on her luck. She's been down on her luck for pretty much her whole life. Her mother is a former model, and she has just kind of lived in this fantasy land for her entire adult life, and Annie has had to take care of her more than her mother has taken care of Annie. And they rent a basement apartment from this woman in New York in a brownstone, and the woman has Annie clean her apartment for her as a way to make money. And one night, the woman calls Annie up and asks her to do her a favor. And she'll pay for it, she'll pay her for it and everything, but that she needs this like olive green feather boa taken to the Met. And it needs to be delivered to Diana Vreeland, which I apologize, that name just doesn't want to stick. I want to call it Deanna or Diana. So she is a former Vogue editor, and now she organizes the Met Galas at the Met. And so this boa needs to be delivered to her. So she gets it there, all this stuff takes place, and she ends up being recruited by Diana to be her assistant. So this is huge. Like for her, this is her chance. So she jumps into this 100% wholeheartedly. She is jumping through hoops for this woman. And all the while, we're kind of walking along this trail in parallel with these two women. Everything's happening at the same time, but we're getting bits and pieces of each of their stories. And so Annie is shining in her role as personal assistant to Miss Vreeland. And Charlotte has been working on a handful of things, but one of them specifically is the theft of the loss of a very specific artifact back in 1936 when they evacuated, because it turns out that her husband and his buddy decided they were going to steal an antiquity, and it went down with the ship. Well, suddenly this specific antiquity shows up in the Met to be displayed. This raises all kinds of red flags for Charlotte, and she ends up going along and digging into this mystery. And throughout her digging into this mystery, she ends up finding herself in some very scary situations, and she's getting pushback, whether it's from her boss at the Met or, you know, any number of things, right? Well, the night of the Met Gala comes to pass, and it is a disaster. And we end up going on this journey with not only Charlotte, but also Annie, to try, and Annie is trying to recover her reputation, which, oh my goodness, talk about some scheming women. And then Charlotte is trying to figure out what happened, because this artifact that went down with the ship makes her wonder, okay, well, if the artifact survived, what happened to Henry? Because it was last seen in his possession. And if then Henry's death comes into question, what about Layla? So this whole thing ends up opening this huge can of worms. And the way she writes the story and the level of detail she goes into about the artifacts and the events that take place is really well done. Fiona Davis did an exceptional job with the research that she did on this book. And I was gripped. I mean, would I have picked this up any other time? Probably not. I probably would have never thought about this book. I had never heard of it before we picked it up for my book club. But it was an excellent story. And I learned things. Like, I learned about certain things that have to do with Egyptian culture and Egyptian artifacts, or antiquities, excuse me. I learned the difference between an artifact and okay. I learned the difference between an artifact and an antiquity, which was, I just thought they were the same thing. But amazingly, they're not. So I actually learned a lot with this book. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the perseverance of both women. And I thought it was a really well done book. I gave this book 5 stars. Like, it was that good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was exceptionally well done. It's a 5-star, but it's not a 5-star I would reread, if that makes sense. Like, it was a great one-off. Now, I am looking forward to continuing on with my readathon this month. I have a lot of books to read, like a lot. And I will be, excuse me, we're gonna just hold this because I just knocked it off. So I will be coming back very soon with a little, just kind of a check-in for my May readathon. I will be kind of just giving everybody a little update on where we are and what we're doing and how much fun we're having. So I hope you guys decide to come back and join me for that. Otherwise, please like if you want to, subscribe to the channel. I am working on being more consistent in my updates. I think I say that every video, but I'm getting there. So I love that you guys come and join me, and I really hope that you come back. So everyone have a great day. Have a great month. and I will see you later. Bye.